Hi, this is Ian Tronto, and I'm going to be going over my research to practice project on social and emotional health in the secondary schools. So, high school, middle school, just going over some of the problems, why it should be something that needs to be addressed, and then a potential plan of action to try to help with the cause. So, just briefly to go over the actual problem here, social emotional health and depression in our schools has been on the increase for the last 10 years, the last decade or so. Studies have actually shown that currently between 20 and 30% of our students in the secondary levels do suffer from depression. And something a little bit more scary is actually 9% of our students at the secondary levels have contemplated suicide or even attempted suicide. So it is something that we really need to address. It's something that hasn't been a huge focal point at these younger levels in the past, but currently it is something that we need to adjust and we need to transition ourselves, how we teach, how we address our students now differently than we had to 20 years ago. Um, so the question here is how can we combat the increasing problem of the deteriorating mental health in our schools and students? So several of the causes of the deteriorating mental health that we need to look into. Currently, this is a big one. I think it's obvious. I think all the schools have been preaching it, but COVID-19 has really enhanced and spiked the depression in our children. A lot more students are suffering from depression since coming back from the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of them have missed out on social time, social hours, and just being more reclusive has caused a lot more of these issues to arise. Another thing, actually, that again is something we didn't really think about 20 years ago, but currently we are now, is social media. It is stated through a study done by Pantich, which is actually in my paper, stated that social media and social networking has actually increased depression, and I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, again, less social action, a little bit more reclusivity, which is something that students don't think about, kids don't think about, we don't think about on actually increasing mental health. It's important to be outside, get sunshine, be active, let our endorphins go. And with the social networking and social media, it's actually causing those things to go away. It's also giving our students, giving our kids and ourselves the ability to read and look through things that possibly might not be something we want to do in our necessary life, and gives reminders on where we're at compared to what these social media models are at and these actors are at, and that's actually playing a role in the mental health of our kids. There's also just clearer data now. It's something that is being looked into a little bit more seriously. The last 15, 20 years, social mental health and depression have really, really become more accepted, which is fantastic. But the reality is, 20, 30 years ago, it was something that people didn't understand why others were depressed, and you know thought there's no reason to be depressed. Where now it is just a little bit more acceptable, and the clearer data kind of shows that, and I think in a sense actually helps people come out as being depressed, seeking help, doing these things. And then finally, it's just experiences. One of the other articles that was discussed in my literature review, done by Denny and Robinson, talks about just actually having um, a positive environment and how big of a role that plays with our students' mental health. The students that had a positive environment in their schools tended to be a lot happier, a lot healthier. Whereas, as obvious as it is, on the negative side, where students reported having more of a negative experience at school, more of a negative environment, these students were suffering a bit more from depression and anxiety and just mental health issues as a whole. So it's really, really important, especially us as educators, to understand this. I thought this was a really big one. Um, we need to try our best to create this positive environment and this positive place for our students to feel safe and feel comfortable, and not feel like they can't be themselves and feel like they're alone. So that's a really big, really big role, is the experiences that students are having in schools. So the plan of action that I came up with. So step one is just awareness. So there's two steps to the step one, which is the awareness, is we want to make our students aware that it's okay to suffer from depression, to have mental health, maybe be struggling with their mental health. It's okay for that, because the only way to get through it is talking about it and, taking action on it. If you keep these things inside, it doesn't magically go away. So our students need to understand that, and understand that we support them. As well as administration, again, I stated it earlier, but 9% of our students currently have contemplated or attempted suicide, and 25 to 30% of students currently suffer from anywhere between mild and severe depression. This is something that I think needs to be addressed through administration, through the Board of Education, because regardless of our education, regardless, of why we become teachers, the reality is if they don't have the clear mental health and mental clear headspace, then we can't get through to what we want to do with them anyways. So the administration needs to take steps forward and actually, um, you know, want to take care of this other pandemic that we're going through. Step two is creating safe places. So I know I work at Chino Wells High School, and we actually have a mental health safe place on campus where students, if they need to take a break, they can go, and it's usually, there's fountains in there, and there's bean bags, and there's, calming music in there where they can actually just go and talk. And if it's really, they feel like they're really having a breakdown or something severe, our psychiatrists are in there, or I'm sorry, our psychologists are in there, and they'll talk to them, and they'll talk to them one on one. It starts with counselors. The counselors will start with the students, and then if it gets more severe, then the psychologist will go in. But it gives them a place to go if they feel like they're alone or feel like they're just overwhelmed with things. Step three is actually one of the studies another study that was in my lit review talked about mentoring and how it has a positive effect on students' health, mental health. So creating clubs or something along those lines for student mentoring. We have a lot of opportunity with that through sports, through like I said, clubs. To mentor some of these students and give them somebody to talk to and help them. This can also be done through adults. So having our counselors take an extra step. I know they're there to set up classes and whatnot, but maybe giving them that opportunity to mentor some of these students that struggle with these certain things. Um, so I think that would be a huge plus, is just getting everyone involved and everyone on the same page, whether even if you're not depressed, maybe getting involved to help with this problem that we're going through. And then step four is data collection. We want to collect data. We want to see, just like any of the research articles we read, do a pre-assessment and a post-assessment and see what's working and see what's not. And, before we put these steps in place, let's do a pre-assessment. Let's see where our kids are feeling in our district. And then after several months, let's do it again and see if we've made any headway. And if not, then we make more adjustments. Or if it looks like it's going the right way, then we can continue doing what we're doing to help further, enhance the mental health of our students. So just real quick, just to look for the criteria for success in this, indicator one, like we just said, would be a pre-assessment versus post-assessment, seeing where we're at and then seeing where we headed. Now, obviously, I know there's issues getting the correct data at times, where sometimes students will answer the way they think that we want them to answer. But it is a point of data that we can use to further enhance and help moving forward. Two would be data comparison and records review. So recording this means as a whole from the data comparison, but also records review for our individual students. Some of our students have records of struggling with mental health and struggling with having depression issues. So reviewing their records and seeing where they're at after several months of instilling this plan. And then indicator three, letting the students give free fluid feedback to school psychologists and administrators. This will allow us to have a better understanding of where our students are feeling, where they're at, and also this will get our administrators more involved in understanding where our kids are at and where, how severe this issue is. And it also just creates a bit of a better sense of community at our schools, because now the students don't just see that as that's the principal, but they might tend to start seeing that as somebody else who cares in their lives. So just my closing statements real quick, before I end this little lecture, but do want to say that it is something very, very important that I think we need to focus on um, at this level. You know, we have a huge impact on our students' lives. It is something that has increased over the years. So it's important that we don't hide from it, and we actually step up and do something about it. Because, like I said in the very beginning of this lecture, was it's our jobs to adjust and transition and make changes to fit the students that we have currently. And this is something that our current students are struggling with. It's not a secret, it's not a surprise. So we can't put it behind the curtains, and we have to make sure we are aware and we do something about it, and we come up with a plan to help these students. Because again, they're not going to be getting the best education if they don't have clear headspace and if they're struggling with depression. At the end of the day, the education is secondary if our students are depressed or do have mental health issues. Because at the end of the day, that's something that could take their lives, and learning a U.S. history lesson on the day is not. So I really, really do think this is the bigger thing to look for, and we need to make sure we take this, this, in a sense, pandemic seriously. So thank you again for listening. Here's my references for my lecture and my literature review. These are some where I got my data. Again, thank you so much. Hopefully we can be the change together, and I'll talk to you all soon.